Have you been looking for a Taekwondo podcast with qualified people who know what they're talking about, who help you keep up with everything going on in the Taekwondo world? Well, you found it. This is the Taekwondo Podcast. Taekwondo news, competitions and other events, training and sports science, keeping the fans, coaches, and high-performance athletes up to date with the latest news and trends on Olympic Taekwondo. Let's do this. This is the Taekwondo Podcast. And now your hosts, Coach César Valentim and Peter Nestler.
Hello and welcome to the Taekwondo Podcast. We're a podcast based out of Austria in English language for everyone out there who likes Taekwondo. In this episode, we talk about the new competition rules that have been approved and what changes we can expect in the different weight divisions. Welcome to our podcast. I'm Coach César Valentim and with me is Coach Peter Nestler. Hi Peter, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. I'm glad to be back on, and we have a very interesting topic today.
Yes, considering all the situations and all the topics of the previous episode, it's nice to speak about something that is actually affecting everyone around the world. In this case, the amendments to the WT competition rules and the interpretation that came into effect in February 16 to 2022. Yes, they came into effect, but the fact is that we haven't had, at the moment we were recording this podcast, any referee seminar, any official position of the first tournaments will use them. And pretty much what we're going to talk is about the rules that have been published and what we've been talking to experts in the matter when we meet them in the competitions. So talking about the big confusion out there, there is in the weight category for the weight categories, and there is several weight divisions, and now for the cadets they added also an extra category called the height categories, and people were confusing themselves with adding new rules with replacing the old rules. And it's very important to clarify that the weight divisions still exist. What exists is also another competition format where instead of weight divisions you will have height divisions that of course have some weight restrictions. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, the aim of that was that we had the average player was maybe in a certain height, and we had some very big gaps to the highest and the tallest and the smallest players. So they wanted to get a little more standardization into the categories. So they are trying in the moment with this weight plus height division. I don't know. We have to try. I don't know what comes out.
Well, there's, in my opinion, two things that have to be taken into consideration. The first is, of course, the developmental age of the players, because the teenage players, some of them mature much faster than others. So divisions based on maturation would make sense. Based on height, I understand why they do it. It's mostly trying to restrict the huge weight cuts and the very dangerous weight cut methods that some players use and some athletes use and some parents push their kids to do. And of course, creating some guidelines and especially some rules that take into consideration the BMI to avoid the athletes to be taking dangerous procedures to make weight. It's a good situation. My opinion, using WHO criteria that is actually for the general population based on developing countries, taking those values to Western world, to the very well fed, very well treated, very well rested, very well dressed, and very well shoed players, it's I think taking this BMI into consideration is a big mistake, because when we look at the divisions, we do see that the maximum weight allowed to the height categories will make sure that the fit athletes will have to compete with athletes that are way heavier, and of course puts them in a disadvantage in terms of power, in terms of impact, in terms of technical and tactical approach to the game. And it's a situation that will of course promote the little heavier kids, but it will not help them progress to the juniors when these categories disappear and you will go back to the single weight divisions. What are your thoughts on that?
If you change rules, there will be always a reaction from the field of play. So this one goes in a certain direction, and you're fully right. It more prefers those who are not that slim and that tall. But well, as I said, we have to look what it brings, what the developments will be.
It's important that that most coaches understand, and most players, especially in this age, that they're, of course, very emotional, that they understand that this is a 2 years or 3 years athletes in this division, and that most of the times, yes, they will see in local tournaments the little heavier and little smaller kid, but in the big competitions, that's not going to be the case. It will, of course, allow the kids that don't mature and don't grow and don't have this height growth in the early cadet years to stay a little longer, but I don't think it's actually a good approach regarding BMI. For the safety of the players, I would suggest other measures. For example, maximum height for the weight division that would allow them to have at least a little bit better approach, and not only a maximum weight but also probably a minimum weight for the height division if you want to keep the height categories. It was the approach they took, BMI, based on the World Health Organization standards. Again, it's general population, it's not athletic population, it's not Western world developed countries. So it's probably an event, since these divisions are not the only ones existing. I don't think many countries will push for these kind of categories in their competitions. Do you think the World Cadets Championships will be on height, or they will continue with the weight divisions?
I don't think that they will change that system very fast. I even don't think that it will stay for long, because, as you said, the basic criteria is drawn by general population, which makes no sense at all. So let's see if it stays that long.
Well, talking about the new introductions to the competition formats, the newest format is the duration of the contest. Now they want to do this like a little 90s video game where the winner of most rounds wins, and the best of 3 system where the players compete round per round, not summing the points from the previous rounds, allowing you for a different competition format. Of course, introducing some extra rules. For example, point gap per round will eliminate a round. Do you think this will bring more excitement to the game, or will it actually backfire and bring a much more boring competition system?
In some cases, it completely changes the setup for a player. So you can't wait for all 3 rounds. You have to take into consideration the result from each round, from round to round. But it also we also may get rid of some games where it's very clear who is the winner. That's positive.
We already have the point get system on the 2 rounds. The fact that there is at least 2 rounds to win the best of 3, the duration of the contest will, yes, of course, getting a 12-point gap in the second round will make the second round shorter than waiting until it's finished to decide a point cap. But in terms of training, especially one of the things that I like is training based on energetic approaches. Do you think the players will cut on the endurance training, especially the trainers will adapt from an endurance-based training to allow them to compete for 3 rounds with a little bit more stamina, and allow them to be more explosive and focus on very short and more defensive approach on the first 2 rounds?
I think they will have to adapt their training systems a little bit. Explosiveness will be more important. You still have to have endurance, but on a different basis, because each round is very important. So the training systems will change a little bit, but also the psychological structure should change. There are late starters in matches who will only win their matches in the last round. They will have a problem.
We will see, according to these rules, I've heard some coaches mentioning you work for 30 seconds on the first round and then you go defensive for the rest of the match. That will bring us a combination with the next rules that you have much more difficulty on scoring in the clinch. A lot of forbidden techniques when you are in the shorter distance will make the fights become a little more like what we've seen in Manchester, that were so booed and people were so disgusted with the fact of the strategy used, even though it was inside the rules. You think this kind of game, this new best of three, where the rounds and especially the clinch duration being increased and the limitation of techniques in the clinch will make sure that the athletes work more on a close combat push in the clinch instead of kicking and more dynamic, so actually backfiring the idea of creating an explosive competition system?
With the new rules, maybe Instagram will be empty, because some of the fun kicks we had in the last years or months or years will be gone. No more Scorpion. What a pity. It showed the big flexibility of some athletes. It's always fun to look at that kicks, and to not forget it's a great fun for the audience, not for us, and that we are coaches and players. They just want to hit somewhere, and they will have to hit how it is allowed. But the audience might like those kicks.
I do understand that they want to get rid of some of the softer kicks on the clinch. You had a lot of grabbing your own foot and touching the helmet and things like that, and some of the kicking even on the vest that were not really combat sports. They were more like ball sports, where the knees and the feet were touching something in a very strange position. It looks like a Messi or Ronaldo way of kicking. I understand they want to go for a more combative approach to the match and reducing the soft touches on the short distance just for the score. But then again, allowing the clinch to be so long and allowing the kicks on the clinch to be just the basic ones, I think the competition will go, in my opinion, it will backfire. I think I don't want to be I don't want to be a conservative coach. Usually I like the new technology, I like the new approaches, and I've been in favor of many of the approaches that the WT did. In this case, I think some of the explanations are good. Some of the interpretation, validation of techniques are good, allowing the kicks to be more real, not the soft kicks on the head. That was the point, and allowing to, whoa, that was a kick. That's okay. But on the other hand, I think that some of the rules are just too specific. Not the question, for example, of not suffering a kamjon if the other opponent scores a tichagi on you and you fall down. It's so specific and so rare that you don't understand why it's on the rules. And it will also, of course, there's a reason to be there. It exists. I understand that the penalty doesn't need to be added to a 4-point kicking technique just because you fell down. But how is the audience going to prepare for such consistency when there is no consistency? The rule is you fall down, you get a fall, you get a penalty, and the opponent gets a point. But for this very specific, almost never used situation, they will not get a penalty. I think it's bringing stuff into the rules that doesn't need to be there.
The Taekwondo has a specific rules problem. There is too many changes, especially in Kyorugi, but also in Pumse, that makes it unclear. The audience has for a long time lost the ability to guess, might that have been a point or not, or what was that? So it's a very theoretic thing in the moment. And also not to forget that standards newly developed, so the new rules have to be spread to all the referees, all the coaches, all the athletes in the world. So this will take a little while till it's through. It's not easy, to be honest.
The Article 13, when it comes to, of course, the 13.6, that was the one that was changing the rules. It says that in case there was a strong impact to the head or a kick to the eyes, some bleeding or knockdown by a kick to the head, and the referee begins counting, but the attack was not scored by the head electronic system. The referee should request or must request the IVR, but now also the coach must request the IVR if it was not awarded points after the count. But again, only in case of the referee starts counting. So it's not that I can ask for a head video review every time. Do you think it's a bad decision, a good decision? How do you take a look at this decision?
The coaches may like that, so they would even have liked to have it without counting. So for the coaches, they think it's positive. But when you take into consideration the picture you get on the IVR, in many cases the angle is not good. The video quality, in my opinion, is not the one we could have. So what will we really see on that? It's more easy if it's a kick to the body than the limited space which is given by the head. So the coaches might like it, but the real outcome is unclear in the moment.
I agree that the coaches would like to have even without the counting. I think if the PSS is known for missing the scoring to the head, the helmets, in some cases, in one of the brands, you don't even need to touch the helmet. If you're close enough, you get the point. In the other cases, you hit the helmet and it doesn't come. I think the video replay for the head score should be at least reintroduced, considering that the PSS does have these failures. But again, we know that it will delay the game. It will make a lot more breaks. It will make the event organizers scream because the events are running behind. That it also would have to be coupled with the good video replay system, not one single camera, fisheye style on a corner far away with a bad quality and old laptops. And everything needs to be improved for the video replay to work. And of course, making the event faster if there's acceptance of some technology mistakes. But again, technology is improving. We know that there is a new generation of data being developed by TrueScore, and hopefully those situations improve. The same way that improved was the rules regarding the penalties. Regarding the penalties, it's a little more clear what's grabbing, even though it was always forbidden. Now there's a clear definition that hooking your arm to lock the leg is a comes on, even though it was always before the same as lifting the leg to block or kicking the opponent's leg. Those were always in the previous rules, but now they're a little more outlined. If the kick was in the air for more than 3 seconds, that's something that still needs to be clarified, because 3 times in the air it's not the same as 3 seconds, and the referee still follow the interpretation, not what's written. But on the other side, the interpretation that avoiding the match is just not 3 steps backward, but also 3 steps sideways. And that's something that it leaves a little bit to interpretation, because me recovering the balance and recovering my tactical position in the field by doing 3 steps sideways should not be penalized. Running away by walking sideways was already penalized before. So do you think the rules and interpretation are enough, or is there some other guidelines that will have to be added to these rules?
The more you specify the rules, the more you have to adapt them. That's the problem. So we have quite intensively specified rules in regard of avoiding the match. It's a whole catalog, and that will be bring problems, because the more you specify, the more problems you could see there. In my opinion, 3 steps backward, 3 steps sideways, it's sometimes more an interpretation of the center referee. It's not just accounting. As you said, if it's trying to regain the balance, that's different than just turning back and running away. So it's more the feeling of the referee, of the center referee. But in my opinion, the quality of the referees, especially the centers, has enormously risen in the last years. We could also see President's Cup this time, them using the IVR, their card. So I'm pretty sure they will find a nice balance for the athletes.
This podcast is supported by Hawken Dynamics. Hawken Dynamics believes that technology is most useful when it stays out of your way. That's why Hawken developed the world's first wireless force plate system with extreme usability. It is the quickest, easiest to use, and most robust solution on the market. It is trusted by all sports organizations large and small, as well as tactical, military, and rehabilitation environments around the globe. It's force testing in the palm of your hand. Here at World Taekwondo Center, we use Hawken Dynamics to test and monitor our team. The cloud-based platform allows us to access data and publish a variety of reports on the go. My favorites are trend reports and, of course, weight reports, where I can monitor different metrics to view progress and identify performance indicators, or to compare weights to a baseline data range. I use it on a daily basis to identify readiness. A simple jumping test takes me less than a minute to assess the entire team. Having my own Hawken Dynamics force plates allows me to test reactive strengths, maximum strengths, rate of force development, asymmetry, and so much more. The real-time feedback on the app is useful not only for testing, but as a training tool, making it more accurate and at the same time more engaging for the athletes. If you are interested in learning more about Hawken Dynamics or getting your own, the team can be reached at info@hawkendynamics.com or on Instagram or Twitter at Hawken Dynamics. When talking about Taekwondo training, we need to talk about Athlete Analyzer. Athlete Analyzer is the first Taekwondo-specific athlete monitoring system. It is used by both national teams, regional squads and small clubs to maximize performance, prevent injuries, and communicate with both athletes and trainer teams. Athlete Analyzer is a cloud-based system with a friendly smartphone app. You can plan and monitor every aspect of your training, even when you are not in the gym with your team. The easy-to-use video analysis tool is not like anything you've seen. It helps you understand your athletes and even their opponents, making this app the only tool you need to manage your team. Before I used Athlete Analyzer, I spent an absurd amount of time in front of the computer, creating spreadsheets and using half a dozen software solutions. I have athletes in my center, but also abroad, and with Athlete Analyzer, it's much easier to communicate, plan, and monitor their development. Now that I have extra time, I can focus on what matters, training my athletes, and it still leaves me some room to do other stuff, like this Taekwondo podcast. Athlete Analyzer offers you a 2 weeks free trial. Visit them at athleteanalyzer.com to sign up, or click on the link in the episode's description. To get the most of your free trial, I recommend you first book a free personal demonstration with Niklas. It will give you a great insight of what Athlete Analyzer has to offer you and your team. It is well worth the time.
You're listening to the Taekwondo Podcast. Now back to your hosts, Coach César Valentim and Peter Nestler.
Welcome back. On this episode, we're talking about changes to the rules, the new approved amendments to the competition regulations in Kirugi. The thing that is probably affecting most of the players and the coaches later on in the game, it involves direct, of course, training systems. It's the best of three system. In case of a tie score, of course, we'll count to all the points accumulated through the 3 rounds. But there are other restrictions. There's a point cap of 12 per round. There's the fact that the rounds don't need to be 2 minutes. They will be much shorter in some cases. Or that the events will be, the rounds will be a little more active for a few short bursts and then a lot of more defensive and inactive situations. How do you think that countries will adapt to this, and how do you think the events will be changing? Do you think they will use these best of 3 most of the times, or they will stick to the old rules?
I think they will like it. Maybe Levin Tunjat comes back as a fighter. I don't know. It should give more attractivity to the fights. The teams will adapt. Let's see which system will be there in the end.
From what I understand, from the rumors and all the talk in the corridors and warm-up areas in the competitions, WT really wants to push all events to be best of 3. And that includes probably shorter than the World Championships. We'll probably start seeing it at the continental levels, but almost certain it will come at the World Championships. I think bringing it so late without being tested is not a good idea, so they will probably be testing in some events. Definitely Korea will start using them, and some of the countries that have a little more inside connections that will understand what is coming up in terms of the rules. The events being best of 3 in making these rounds to the new format, do you think it's going to make the coaches adapt, or you think most of them will just keep up with the flow and understand that their players need to have different kind of training?
They have to adapt, clearly. I mean, if the format is like that, you have to adapt. You have to do your mathematics during the match, so you have to count how many spinning turning kicks you have. They will have to follow, clearly.
The system that I used training my athletes, each one of them has to work on their energetic approach and on the thresholds that they use based on the video analysis from previous events and from previous matches. Without having too many of these events, it's almost impossible to create a good, solid analysis and therefore create an energy and active and rest profile for my players without having those events. What is the role of the national federations in this kind of situations?
The federations have their structures, their system. They have national coaches and also regional coaches, and all of them should use those things. I'm not sure if it is done by all the federations. We can clearly see that there is some big clubs in the world who bring their own athletes, like Gallup or like Hankook. I'm not sure if all the federations follow those modern approaches.
Well, we'll just hope that not at the Worlds for the first time that we get a new competition format. In the previous years, it was like that. There was some countries that already knew what would come and what would happen before the Worlds in terms of rules. I'm happy that the Worlds being in November, that the rules came out in February. I do understand that there is an approach of learning procedure and a learning curve that needs to be implemented for the players and the coaches to adapt, especially the strength and conditioning coaching has to change a lot. I think one of the few episodes that we're going to talk about with some strength and conditioning coaches, and we have a couple of them lined up for the next episodes, we'll have to discuss about the fact of the shorter or longer rounds, the different offensive or defensive postures, and athlete analysis, and all these things need to be taken into consideration. Thank you, Peter. It was a pleasure being here with you again and with everyone who is listening. This was the Taekwondo Podcast. If you haven't already, listen to our other episodes that are available wherever you listen to your podcast. We are releasing new episodes every Tuesday. Stay tuned. Subscribe to our podcast. Leave us a positive review and share it with your friends. See you next time.
You've been listening to the Taekwondo Podcast, keeping the fans, coaches, and high-performance athletes up to date with the latest news and trends on Olympic Taekwondo. Your host, Coach César Valentim, has almost 20 years of experience with high-performance Taekwondo and has worked all around the world as a Taekwondo trainer. Peter Nestler has been teaching Taekwondo for more than 20 years, and he's currently one of the top referees in Europe. We hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on Instagram at Taekwondo Podcast, on Facebook at Taekwondo Cast, and the website taekwondopodcast.com. See you next time.